You know how sometimes the best JRPGs are the ones nobody talks about? Today, we're going into those JRPGs, those forgotten ones, the games you probably never played, but absolutely should. So I've been playing JRPGs for decades now, and I love the big releases, of course. Those Final Fantasies, those Personas, the Xenoblades, but every once in a while, you stumble on something special. Not because it was hyped, not because everyone was playing it, but because you just found it. Maybe it was something you found in a bargain bin, or maybe you were on a forum and somebody suggested it, showing my age there. Or maybe someone handed it to you and said, just trust me, bro, it's great. So today I want to share 10 JRPGs that didn't get the spotlight they deserved, but absolutely deserve a chance. And before we begin, if you enjoy hidden gems and JRPG discussions like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe, and let me know, what is an obscure RPG that you love? Alright, with that being said, let's discover some new bangers. I want to start with a game that I feel like no one has ever heard of, Yggdra Union. At first glance, it kinda looks like a tactical RPG in the same vein as Fire Emblem or Tactics Ogre, but when you start playing, you realize pretty quickly this game operates entirely on its own systems. Movement and combat are tied to cards. The cards not only determine what actions you can take, but also how far your units can move in that turn. It forces you kind of to think ahead and not just what you want to do on that specific turn. It's also kind of strange in the sense that per turn you can only attack with a single unit, so it adds a little bit of strategy in that sense. I think one of the coolest parts about Yggdra Union has to be the morale system. Your army's morale is basically your shared HP pool. So in fights, you aren't just focusing on a single unit survivability, it's your entire team's. It turns encounters into entire battles of endurance across the entire campaign. Because of this, battles actually feel rewarding when you do win. Now, the tone of Yggdra Union isn't something you haven't seen before. You are leading a struggling resistance that is constantly outnumbered. It sounds incredibly Star Wars-esque, but you have a real sense of fighting uphill, and the game's tone reflects that tension beautifully. Yggdra Union is incredibly challenging, but if you're one of those people who loves thinking 3 steps ahead and overcoming what feels impossible, Yggdra Union becomes unforgettable. It's a game that rewards patience, planning, and, well, stubborn determination. If that's something you're into, I highly suggest you give it a shot. Now here's one that's a little odd. It's always lived in the shadows of Secret of Mana, Secret of Evermore for the Super Nintendo. Secret of Evermore was developed entirely by Square's American studio, which is rare, and because of that, it feels incredibly different from all those other classic Square JRPGs. Secret of Evermore's alchemy system is what makes the game stand out compared to the Mana series. Instead of the traditional magic, you mix elements and items such as clay, water, roots, wax to cast spells. And because you require all these materials, it makes exploration meaningful. Because without finding these ingredients, you don't have your special abilities. One thing I really loved about Secret of Evermore is how every area of the game is incredibly different depending on the era that takes the forefront. Secret of Evermore is divided into these dreamlike zones. One moment you could be in a prehistoric jungle, next you might be in a medieval town, then all of a sudden you're in a futuristic techno world. Each region is like stepping into an entirely new experience, and because it's different, it keeps the game feeling fresh. However, the greatest part of the game has to be that your dog companion changes form in every world. Like at one point he might be a wolf-like beast, the next he might be a toaster-looking robot canine. Everybody loves the toaster dog. I love Toaster Dog, you should love Toaster Dog, even your Aunt June loves Toaster Dog. It's so charming, it's super weird, and that makes it incredibly memorable. The entire game of Secret of Evermore has a quiet and eerie atmosphere. It's playful, but it also feels lonely in a way that you won't forget. Yeah, the game's not perfect. Sure, the constant menus can slow things down, but its mood, its music, and its absolute unique sense of identity make it unlike anything else from the era. Might look like a clone of Secret of Mana at face value, but you'll see that Secret of Evermore is something entirely its own. If you love Super Nintendo action RPGs and want something slightly offbeat and surreal, this is definitely a game you should put on your list. Play Secret of Evermore. Now we're going to move to the PSP with Wild Arms XF, a tactical RPG that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. While most tactics games let you brute force your way through battles, Wild Arms XF takes a different approach. Every map kind of feels like a puzzle, which is in line with what Wild Arms is at its core. Maps are set up with specific layouts, with bottlenecks, verticality, or various hazards that require you to carefully navigate. Even as far as other tactical RPGs go, positioning is far more important than it's ever been before. As I've mentioned numerous times before, I adore job systems in my JRPGs. The class system of Wild Arms XF gives you tons of freedom to shape your party, but what truly stands out is how the game expects you to use those tools thoughtfully. I love when you're playing a strategy RPG and it actually requires strategy, as opposed to something as simplistic as bigger numbers equals bigger victory. I'm looking at you, Disgaea. Great game series, but it's more just numbers. If you enjoy tactical battles that challenge your mind as opposed to just your patience, Wild Arms XF is a gem. It's a difficult game, but it's not unfair. The difficulty feels fair, but it's rewarding. So if you love strategy RPGs and cowboys, as well as puzzles, give Wild Arms XF a shot. You'll really enjoy it.
Let's go!
Crimson Gem Saga is one of those games that doesn't rely on a big gimmick. It just executes the fundamentals extremely well. It's the pumpkin spice latte of RPGs, the epitome of basic turn-based RPGs that leans heavily into what made late 90s and early 2000s RPGs incredibly appealing. There's colorful characters, there's the expressive hand-drawn art, and combat that's quick and satisfying without being shallow and bland. The story follows a pretty classic, albeit kind of generic setup. You have a somewhat unlucky hero who ends up being pulled into something much larger. Yeah, it's literally the same as every JRPG from the Nintendo and Super Nintendo, but what works here is the tone. Crimson Gem Saga is self-aware, it's charming, and occasionally pokes fun at the genre cliches without feeling like it's just a parody. The character banter is natural rather than forced, but it's still very amusing. Combat is where the game quietly shines. Battles are quick and snappy, encounter pacing is efficient, and special skills have satisfying impact. This is a short game and it respects your time. Grinding doesn't feel necessary unless you really want to optimize or grind for SP to learn the next skill in your skill tree. And the difficulty curve remains reasonable, and it won't frustrate you. Crimson Gem Saga is a game that feels comfortably familiar, but in a way that's warm and nostalgic rather than generic and boring. If you want something that feels like a lost PS2 era RPG, but you want it portable, Crimson Gem Saga is an excellent recommendation, especially if you enjoy pure turn-based fundamentals delivered cleanly and efficiently. Quick breather, if you've discovered even one game today that you didn't know about or might be interested in playing, that earns me a subscribe, right? Right? Excellent. Let's continue. Shining Soul is a very different direction for the Shining franchise. Instead of tactical combat or story-focused progression, this one is more of an anime-style Diablo game with several different job classes. It's an action RPG built around short play sessions, leveling up and steadily improving your build. You get to choose from several classes. You have Warrior, Wizard, Archer, or Dragon, each with distinct attack patterns and stat growth. My favorite personally has to be the Archer. I've always been accustomed to bows as a weapon, so naturally, Archer it is. The game is incredibly straightforward, go into dungeons, fight enemies, collect loot, and repeat. But that simplicity is exactly what gives it its longevity. It's the kind of game where you tell yourself, alright, just one more run, and suddenly before you know it, an hour has passed, a whole day has passed. Oh look, it's bedtime now. Oh no, I'm late for work. Oh no, I just got fired. Okay, it's not that bad, but it is the kind of game that you get addicted to and you just can't put down. If you enjoy experimenting with builds and watching numbers climb, the game hits that dopamine loop very cleanly. Now, there's not much narrative depth, the story is extremely minimal. It's basically just, oh, dragon has minions, we need to defeat these minions and defeat the dragon, and so on. Shining Soul is more about the gameplay loop than the world building or character attachment. It's worth recommending, especially if you're somebody who enjoys grinding as a relaxation. If you're someone who wants something you can pick up and play without the mental overhead, Shining Soul works best as a comfort game rather than a grand adventure, and sometimes that's all I need. Folklore on the PS3 is one of those games that's remembered mostly for its atmosphere. It blends dark fairy tale environments with the mystery narrative told through two separate protagonists, each experiencing the story from a different perspective. The major gameplay hook is the ability to capture the souls of enemies called folks, and then use their powers. So rather than traditional skill trees or equipment-based progression, your abilities come from creatures you defeat and capture, and as you capture more of them, those abilities get stronger. It gives the game a very collectible feel, almost like assembling your own customized moveset. But where Folklore distinguishes itself is in its visual direction and tone. The environments have a dreamlike quality, kind of whimsical, but they're also very unsettling. It's kind of almost like a Tim Burton film with comic book style storytelling. It's amazing, and the music reinforces the whole atmosphere with beautiful melodies and very understated emotional cues. It's not a fast-paced action game. Combat can sometimes feel methodical, but if you are someone who values mood, world building, and aesthetic tone, Folklore offers something unique. And it's one of those experiences that feels like you're stepping into a book where the pages are slightly burnt at the edges. This was one of the first PlayStation 3 games I played, and I never got the chance to play it all the way through. Maybe one day I'll buy it again and play it through all the way to the end. The last story is noteworthy, not only because Hironobu Sakaguchi, the father of Final Fantasy, directed it, but because it takes a very deliberate approach to RPG pacing. Rather than stretching content across 60 plus hours, it focuses on delivering a tight, forward-moving experience, typically around 20 to 25 hours. Sometimes a short RPG is just what you're looking for, and the last story fits that perfectly. Seriously, you start this game and you're immediately into the action. It doesn't have a slow startup, it's instant. Also, while we're on the topic, can I just say the title of this game is almost a synonym to Final Fantasy? Final, last, fantasy, story, Final Fantasy, last story. It doesn't seem all that original, but it still makes me laugh. The combat system mixes real-time action with almost like a Time Crisis cover system. It's really hard to explain, but it allows you to coordinate your party and control battlefield flow. It keeps engagement high without overwhelming you with complexity. In fact, the basic battle system, you don't even have to attack. In fact, that's kind of something that I thought was a little bit weird. So you have two battle systems. You have automatic, where all you have to do is move your character close to the enemy, or you have a manual mode where you actually have to press a button to attack. But if you go manual mode, you do half damage compared to automatic. I have no idea why it does this, but I guess it's to balance things because you can attack more in manual mode than you do in automatic. I got no idea. Anyways, yes, the battles are streamlined, but they have enough depth to keep things interesting. The cast is one of the game's highlights. The writing of the last story focuses more on interpersonal chemistry, how characters interact, how they joke, argue, and support each other. The relationships feel grounded, and the group dynamic strengthens as you go through the game, making you feel like you're one of the friend group. Musically, Nobuo Uematsu's score gives the story a subtle emotional texture that supports its themes without overpowering them. If you've played any Final Fantasy game, you know exactly what to expect. Music from Final Fantasy and the last story, they're very similar. If you want a story-driven RPG that is quick, punchy, and emphasizes character dynamics over sprawling lore, The Last Story remains one of the Wii's strongest exclusives, even today. Now with that being said, I wish we could get a remaster of this game, because on the Wii, even in standard definition, it looks gorgeous. We need a remaster along with games like Lost Odyssey, Blue Dragon, and then also the next game we're going to talk about because it is stuck on the Xbox 360.
I should still be able to fight with this.
Magna Carta 2 was a case where platform choice limited its exposure. Releasing a JRPG, or I guess KRPG, on Xbox 360 had to have been one of the most ridiculous choices that you could have made in that era. It meant that Magna Carta 2 immediately missed a large portion of the JRPG audience, which leaned almost entirely PlayStation and Nintendo at the time. And before we jump into it, as I mentioned before, yes, I know this is a Korean RPG, not a JRPG. But you know what? Semantics. With that being said, let's carry on. The combat system of Magna Carta 2 is action and blends real-time positioning with cooldown-based abilities. creating a rhythm where you alternate between bursts of high output and periods where you need to take a slight break. The overheat mechanic encourages you to intentionally push your character for maximum damage, and timing combat flow for maximum efficiency. The art direction is absolutely a major strength. Influenced by Korean RPG design, character models have a distinct softness and stylization that set the game apart visually. And I won't even get into the risque designs, because we've all seen them. Seriously, the art of this game though is absolutely gorgeous. Narratively, the pacing can be uneven, and the dialogue is sometimes hit or miss, but the world building is strong, and once the combat clicks, the gameplay loop becomes incredibly fun. Magna Carta is a good recommendation if you're someone who enjoys hybrid battle systems and appreciates games trying something mechanically different from the standard turn-based and action formula. Magical Star Sign is a bright, imaginative JRPG that takes a planet-hopping adventure approach to its world structure. Each planet is themed around different elemental magic types, and that's where the game's most interesting mechanics comes in. This is one of the first DS RPGs I ever played. I remember buying it from Walmart, and then never touching it again for several years because I hate solely motion controls and touch controls. It's annoying. Just let me use my buttons. With that being said, the way elements are handled in Magical Star Sign is something like I've never actually seen before. The elemental alignment system shifts in real time based on planetary positioning. When your character's element matches the current alignment, they gain stronger spell effects. And it's a layer of strategy that you might not actually consider otherwise. I think one of the things I loved about Magical Star Sign was about just how gentle it was. The tone is incredibly lighthearted. It has playful dialogue and very warm character personalities. It's not trying to deliver a heavy, emotionally intense story. Instead, it focuses on being pleasant to spend time with. This is something I wish more RPGs would do. Sometimes I just want something calm and easy to enjoy. Not everything has to be super serious and prove a point. Combat is clean and it's readable. It's not too easy, but it's never overwhelming. If you're someone who enjoys DS-era RPGs with whimsical vibes and imaginative world concepts, Magical Star Sign is one of the best cozy adventure picks in the genre. Actually, I just recently found out that Magical Star Sign isn't actually a standalone game. It's a sequel to Magical Vacation for the Game Boy Advance, which we never got the opportunity to see in North America. Maybe a collection is due? And lastly, let's talk about nostalgia. No, not nostalgia where we look back at old games. Nostalgia is a Nintendo DS JRPG that takes a very deliberate step back towards the classic feeling of late 90s adventure RPGs. The kind that focus more on exploring the world and saving it from some universe-ending catastrophe. It's set in an alternate early 20th century Earth, which immediately gives it a different tone from most JRPGs. Instead of a purely fantasy world, you're traveling to stylized versions of London, New York, Cairo, Tokyo, places that feel familiar but just different enough to feel adventurous. The core premise is simple, but it's effective. Your father, a legendary adventurer, has gone missing, and you set out to follow his path and uncover what happened to him. It's not trying to be dark or heavy. The tone is upbeat, it's optimistic, and focused on the excitement of the journey. Very much so a travel story, where the party feels like a group of explorers charting the unknown rather than warriors fighting a world-ending experience. One of the game's biggest strengths has to be the airship system. The airship isn't just a vehicle, it's your hub. You'll battle in the air, upgrade your ship, and use it to uncover new regions. Kind of like Skies of Arcadia. The characters are very basic and very straightforward archetypes. They're likable, they're cleanly written, and very easy to understand. It's not a character drama-driven RPG. The story is more about the group's shared adventure than deep internal conflict, and that simplicity actually works in the game's favor. It keeps the pacing steady and lets the world, the journey, and the sense of discovery take center stage. Nostalgia flew under the radar for a few reasons. It came out late in the DS's lifespan, didn't have strong marketing, and it was overshadowed by bigger DS titles like Dragon Quest and Pokemon. But if you're someone who enjoys games like Skies of Arcadia, or who just misses JRPGs that actually feel like adventures, this is one of the best forgotten gems on the Nintendo DS. So that's 10 JRPGs that slipped under the radar, but offer something worthwhile, whether it's atmosphere, strong fundamentals, or unusual mechanics. Which of these have you played, and which are new to you? Let me know in the comments, and if you have hidden gems to recommend, I'd love to hear about them. If you enjoyed the video, definitely hit that like button and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel grow and keeps videos like this coming. This has been Shinky, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a wonderful day.